All right, Dennis. Thank you, brother, for your service. Really grateful to be here today. David G., grateful recovering alcoholic, lustaholic from Oklahoma. Grateful for a recovery date in AA of August of 94 and a recovery date in SA of October 1st, 2019. Really grateful to be here again this week. I think this has been about 20 weeks we've been doing the big book together, and we're moving toward the end of it. We really are. Today and then just a couple of more weeks, we will finish up. As I've usually always only covered the first 7 chapters in the book, and so that's what we'll be looking to do here as well. So, a few more weeks of it, and then and we'll be finished up. We've been taking a really in-depth look at this book and these steps as they're laid out in the order that they're laid out. The work necessary to recover here, not only stay sober. And we've looked at some pretty intense work that we have to do. I just want to come in here and sit down and let God do all the work. I just, ask for his will to be done, and I'll kick back and take it easy. And for some reason, that just never did work. And then after someone put me into this portion of the work and brought me through the book, then I begin to see why. God will do for me what I cannot do for myself, but there's a whole lot I can do for myself, and he expects me to do that. So, with that being said, we're in the morning portion of step 11. Last week, we took a look at the evening review, and that was there's just a lot of stuff there that I never did for 25 years in AA. I would read this part of the book. I would do book studies in different places, and I would talk about the 11th step and all this, but it was just something that I never really did on a consistent basis. I may read it. I may even journal it here and there once in a while. But today it's a requirement for me to do this via email every evening. And since I've come to Sexaholics Anonymous a little more than 14 months ago, however long it's been now, I have not missed a night in doing this. Now, awakening was something that was different for me. I can remember sending those nightly reviews to my sponsor, and at the end of it, I would always add morning meditation, prayer, and then I would just talk about my day. And I can remember him emailing me back and saying, "What are you doing on awakening?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing exactly what the big book says that I should do, just like we've done everything else. Do you have any suggestions?" And he said, "I do. I suggest that you sit in silence, or you try to silence your mind." That's something I've never been very good at. I don't know about you, but I know about me, and I've never been very good at being able to do that. And in fact, it was completely new to me. So about that time, I had been looking around for a sponsor in SA. In fact, it had been quite some time. I looked pretty closely at a lot of people in SA to become my sponsor, and I ended up picking Steve D from the Sacramento, California area, who is on this call from time to time and was a speaker on the morning meeting some time ago. And so I connected with Steve, and Steve is very big into meditation and guided meditations and sitting in silence, and he referred me to a book that was called The Presence Process. And that's something that I did for quite some time until I just, this 10 weeks through going back doing it, it's just been tougher for me to do. So I fell away from that. I say all that to say this. There's one line in this book that tells us that we should expand our meditation far beyond what Bill W. is asking us to do here. Now, he knows as beginners, this is a good way for us to start. But as we progress in our spiritual life with our meditation, then there's other things that we should do. In fact, he encourages it, and we'll take a look at some of that as we go along. So let's start right there on page 86. We'll drop down to the paragraph that says on awakening, and he says this: "Let us think of the 24 hours ahead." Now, I don't know about you, but when I wake up in the morning, the last thing I thought about was the 24 hours ahead. I always thought about the 24 hours behind or the 3 or 4 days back. I'm always looking backwards, or I'm always looking in the future. I'm looking somewhere other than today. And I think that's a big problem for people like us with addiction, because anytime we do that, then our mind sets us up to be somewhere other than the now. And I don't know about you, but I know about me, and I get in a whole lot of trouble when I'm out of the now. I was at an AA meeting speaking one time, and a guy, when I stepped off from the podium, I came down, he told me, he said, "Son, I hear you talk a whole lot about the future, and I hear you talk a whole lot about the past, but I didn't hear you talk a whole lot about now." And he said, if you want to take that trip in the past when you're behind this podium, that's great. But you really need to do that on your own time. You need to take that by yourself because God's not there. I'm not saying that he's not everywhere. He's not omnipresent. But I'm telling you, he's not there. And you can take that trip in the future all you like, but you need to take that by yourself because he's not there either. He's here and now, and we want to hear here and now. And that really changed the way that I spoke. And I began to look more into the now. And for me, that has been the key on awakening. So that's what he says. Let us think of the 24 hours ahead. The first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to consider my plans for the day. Now, just because I make a plan for the day doesn't mean that that's the way that the plan's going to turn out. One of the things that I was told in coming through this work, go ahead and plan the plan, but don't plan the result of the plan, because if you do, you're playing God. And that may not turn out that way, and you're going to end up with a resentment and a whole lot of trouble. So I'm going to consider my plans for the day like he talks about here, but I'm going to leave the outcome of it to God, because as we go through the day, we all know plans change. So before I begin doing any of that, this is the first thing he's going to ask me to do. He's going to ask me to start with prayer. He says, we ask God. Anytime I see that in the big book, that means pause, stop, and do exactly what it's saying. I'm going to ask God to direct my thinking. I'm going to pray that it especially be divorced from self-pity, self-seeking, and dishonest motives. Now, we've been looking at that in the nightly. We look at that in step 10. We've looked at that all the way up from step 4 up to now. So it's not going to change here in the mornings. I'm going to ask him to divorce me from that type of thinking. Now, under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. There's a promise. For after all, God gave us brains to use. Now, I don't know about you, but I know about me, and I use my brains for all kinds of other things. But this is something that I never did. I always knew how to meditate. It was just always unhealthy. I was always meditating the plan. I was always putting together a plan, how I could act out, how I could do this, how I could get away with that. It's very strange that I could remember a song from the Rolling Stones over and over and over in my head from 20 years ago, but I can't meditate on the last 10 minutes, of my life. So something's definitely wrong with my form of meditation, I'll tell you. So anyway, it says our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives, because every action is born in thought. So if my thought life is in a good place, my actions are going to be there as well. Remember in step 3, that's what we looked at when we turned our will and our life over. We looked at our will as our thoughts and our life as our actions. And it's no different here. This is just like an amplified version of it. So our thought life is going to be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. There's a promise. So in thinking about our day, and remember up above there, it said we consider our plans for the day. Here he's recapping on that. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. There again, look where he said up above about the second sentence, we consider our plans for the day. Here he's telling us we may face indecision as we consider those plans. We're not going to let that bother us. We're not going to let that deter us. We're going to go ahead and do exactly what the book is talking about. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here's another prayer. Here we ask God. Again, anytime I see those 3 words, I'm going to stop and I'm going to pray. I'm going to ask God for this: inspiration, intuitive thought, or decision. I'm going to relax and take it easy. I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to struggle in my mind what I should do. In fact, anytime I'm fighting, anytime that I'm struggling with the thought, that's not meditation. That's ego. It's returned and I'm fighting against it. And I should be able to spot that by now for sure. We don't struggle. That's one of the biggest things that I see in the fellowship. Sadly to say, there is a lot of struggle, a lot. I know I struggled for a long time myself. I'm not saying I'm above that. But here it's asking us to do what this says, and then we're not going to struggle. We're often surprised how the right answers will come after we've tried this for a while. Now, there's where I run into trouble. I want this yesterday. I want this now. But the book's telling me that's not going to happen. As I practice this, I'm going to be surprised how the right answers will come after I've tried it for a while. Not right now, not the way that I think. He's going to enlarge on that right here on page 87 as well when he says this: what used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually, there it is again, gradually, not right now, not yesterday, gradually becomes a working part of the mind. And there's another promise. It will become a working part of my mind, but it's not going to be a hurry up deal. This is something I am going to have to practice at. Now, being still inexperienced and just having made conscious contact with God, it's not probable that I'm going to be inspired at all times. In other words, there's going to be times whenever I get upset, I feel dull, I feel disconnected. Trust me, I even feel that way today. At times I do. Look at what he says. I may pay for this presumption with all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. And I go through that from time to time. Thank God for the nightly review, though, because I can come back, I can recap in the nightly review, and I can use step 10 as it's outlined on page 84 to get out of this through the day. So really it's prayer and meditation, not prayer or meditation. So he says, nevertheless, we will find our thinking, and see, there it is again, our thinking will, as time passes, and there it is again, gradually as time passes. After we have tried this for a while, he's told me about 3 times right here in different words that this isn't going to happen all at once, David. This is something you're going to have to continue to practice at for the rest of your life. So in other words, as time passes, I will be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely upon it. And today, that's absolutely true. When I step outside of that for just a little bit, I know because there's a feeling inside of me that doesn't feel good anymore. It doesn't feel free. It doesn't feel clean. It doesn't feel any of that. It really makes me feel yucky on the inside. And so I know that feeling right away. Whenever I spot that today, I go to step 10 right away and do exactly what it says and try to pull myself back into that sunlight. And that's worked several times. So anyway, after I've finished all that with my morning portion, this is what it's going to ask me to do in conclusion of my morning meditation. He says here, we usually conclude the period of meditation, talking about our morning portion of it, with a prayer that I be shown all through the day what my next step is to be. Now, see, I've never seen this prayer in the big book for a long time until, I closely read that, and it says that we're going to conclude the period of meditation with a prayer. And here's my prayer. God, please show me all throughout this day what my next step is to be. Please, God, give me whatever I need to take care of any such problems. In other words, what I seen in my meditation as I was coming through there, if I felt like that was going to be a problem throughout the day, then I need to look at it again here whenever I conclude. Look at this part of the prayer. We ask, especially for freedom for self-will. See, that's something I never done in the morning times. I just said a quick prayer. You read step 11 over on page 59. It says we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry it out. When I read it there, it sounds like the only thing I need to do is ask God, for knowledge of his will and the power to carry that out. But like every other step that's written on the wall in several meeting halls and on page 59 in this book, it's wonderful that they wrote that down. The problem is they left the directions on how to work them inside of the book, and most people don't ever get inside of the book to take a look at that. So we're going to take a close look at that. We're going to ask especially for freedom for self-will. We're going to be careful to make no requests for ourselves only. I used to pray all about me. I know you guys have heard me say this a lot of times. I was even praying selfishly, even though I thought I was praying for other people. God, show me how to be a better husband. Show me how to be a better son. Show me how to be a better member of Sexaholics Anonymous, God, so I can better do your will. And in reality, whenever I take a look at that, really what I'm asking for, let me shine a little bit, God. I appreciate what you've done here, but let me shine for a little while so others will see how good I'm doing and praise my good works. Now, I'll add you in on it a little bit, but let me do that. And see, I wasn't even aware that I was praying that way until I started practicing this part of the book right here. So he says, we may ask for ourselves, however, and this is the only way that I should pray for myself right here, if others will be helped. And thank God for the directions in step 10. If you remember, if you hold your place right there and just flip back to page 84 for just a second, and you look at that paragraph that talks about the thought that brings us to step 10. And as you read, 7 or 8 or 9 sentences down through there, the one thing it's going to do is ask us to resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. And over here on page 87, where we just started, we're going to do this every day. I'm going to pray, but for myself, but only if others will be helped by me doing that. So we're careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us has wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. It never worked because it's all about me. The guy on page 60 to 61 has been put to sleep by this point, but you can bet he's got one eye open and he's ready to wake up and play again pretty quick. And that's my ego. And what better way to do it than in my prayer and my meditation time? So it's very important that I keep an eye on that over here and do what the book's asking me to do. So if circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in morning meditation. Now, this is something that I didn't do for about the first 10 months of being in Sexaholics Anonymous. I had learned how to meditate. I was getting the fruits of the meditations. I was absolutely loving it. My wife was beginning to see a difference in my actions. She could see that I was no longer as selfish as I had been. She kept telling me something has changed. So when I got with Steve D, I began to do the morning portions of the 15 minutes sitting in silence, connecting with the breath, breathing through the nose, in and out, and using a mantra to back it up. She would watch me, from time to time. And then in the evenings, I would come back and I would repeat this again. And she's seen what a change and a calmness began to come over me. And she asked me one day, she said, do you think that I could join you in doing that? And man, what a shock that was for her to even ask a question like that. I immediately thanked God and come back to this part of the book and looked at what we just read. If circumstances warrant, we ask our wives. We don't wait for them to ask us. However, I did. I wish I hadn't, but I did. But we ask our wives and friends to join us in morning meditation. And I said, absolutely. And so that's something that we begin to do in the mornings, more than in the evenings together. But however, I'll take whatever I can get. And that's what I get. And is the mornings is really good for us. Now, there's other things that she likes to do as well. She's a very devout Christian. She's been in recovery for more than 24 years in AA and Al-Anon both. So there's a lot of literature that she likes to use. I'm open to that today too, whereas there was a time that I absolutely wasn't. But really what it's telling us right here is the same thing that we talked about a little bit ago. At this point, it's asking us, let the bridle go. Go with meditation wherever it takes you. And what a wonderful journey it's been. So one of the things that I've had to learn whenever I first worked, and this happened with the presence process this time around, doing with Steve D, it really started getting to where I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And man, I was getting aggravated with myself. And so I finally talked to a longtime member and I said, look, I just can't do this. And it's really, it's hard on me. It made me feel guilty and all this stuff. But anyway, he said, why don't you try something different? He said, why don't you get up for a little while? Why don't you have your coffee, do whatever you do, take your morning walk, whatever you do, go to your truck with this and that, and then try to find some place to get quiet and do it. In other words, get your bearings first before rolling right out of bed and try to do this, because every time I tried to do that, my mind would beat me up to the point where I just couldn't do it. So that's what I've started doing. I've started giving myself a little bit of time to wake up, come to, collect some thoughts, and then come back and set in morning meditation and look at my day the way the book's asking me to do. It's made a very big difference for me. I don't know about anyone else, but it's made a really big difference for me. So look what he says. He says, if we belong to a religious denomination which requires definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. I don't. Some people do. Guys I sponsor do. I encourage them, go be a part of that. However you can connect is however you connect. But it says here, if not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select a few and memorize a few set prayers. And I've done that throughout this big book, this work that we've done all the way up through there. There's several prayers laid out that I memorize and that I have used in my recovery. Has been very helpful. And it says a few set prayers which emphasize the principles that we have been discussing. There are many helpful books also. There's a big one for me. There's some things that I like to look at today in my own journey. Emmett Fox is one of them. Eckhart Tolle is another. Michael Brown with Presence Process, that's been a big one for me. But I would have to say that probably early on, Emmett Fox was one of the best spiritual teachers that I had found. And there's so many others. I mean, we could talk about that all day, but In other words, I have taken these books and I have used it. Emmett Fox has a little book. It's called The Golden Key, and it's whatever you pray for, be very careful, because that's what's going to end up happening. But there was a way to use affirmation as prayer, and the more you did that, the stronger it got. Now, 14 months ago, whenever I hit a bottom with lust and came into SA, and I was so scared to death that week that I had picked up an STD. I was bringing it home to my wife. I was absolutely scared to death. I was in a corner that I hadn't been in ever, I don't guess. And I can remember pulling that little book out, and I can just remember just begging and all of this stuff. But you know what? It's none of that's in vain. I mean, whatever we do is what we do. I think that bottom was necessary for me to climb to a new height. So anyway, he says, there's a lot of helpful books. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. Today, we know if we use the internet in a healthy way, we can look at a whole lot of that too. Today, I'm completely open to Zen Buddha meditation. I'm completely open to all that stuff. Native American Sweat Lodge is a very big part of my spiritual connection in my 11th step. I prefer that over anything. I would rather sit in a little hut and sweat profusely as I would to be wearing a suit and a tie and stand behind a podium in front of 1,000 members talking. It's just me. I love that. There's something cleansing, very cleansing, body, mind, and spirit about a Native American Sweat Lodge. That's been a very big part of my recovery from day one. It says, be quick to see where religious people are right. I always wanted to talk about them. I always wanted to make fun of them, laugh at them. But the book says here, don't do that. Be quick to see where they are right. Make use of what they offer. And I've done that. I'm friends with several pastors in the area today. And I can sit down and talk to them just like I talk to you about addiction and anything else. What I've come to learn is these men are men, just like I am, that they have my best interest at heart. They have the community's best interest at heart. And they're there to help me make decisions on how to move forward and help a lot of people in the congregations. I have several pastors across the U.S. that send a lot of people my way to help with the addiction of lust, alcoholism, and drug addiction. I'm very grateful for those men. Well, I don't know about you, but I know about me. And as I go through the day, all of this wonderful spiritual morning stuff that I've just experienced with God goes away. The first time a small vehicle pulls out in front of my semi, I want to pull over and hit them in the mouth and show them body parts with my hands that, I get very upset. And I get very mad and I do all this stuff. The book tells me that if I will do this, that's not going to happen to me so much. And it's taken me a long time to learn that my peace of mind and my serenity is much more important than any of that. I don't want to hurt anybody out there. So I try as best I can to practice what it says right here at the bottom of page 87. As we go through the day, we pause. Now, that's something I've never done. I've run headlong into any problem that I've ever had. So as we go through the day, we pause. In other words, it's just like hitting the remote on the TV. I'm just going to back up for a second. I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to just wait for a minute. I'm going to do this. It says when agitated or doubtful. Not so much doubtful, but there's a lot of agitation that goes on in my day from time to time. And I've learned just to take a breath, back up, take a moment and do this. It's asking me to say a prayer right here and ask. I want to remember when I see those two words, that means that I need to pray. And so I'm going to back up. I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to pray. And this is what I'm going to pray for, the right thought or action. Remember, our will and our life, our thoughts and our actions. So I'm going to pray for the right thought, the right action. I'm going to constantly remind myself that I am no longer running the show. And if I don't do this, if I let this go by over and over and over, then I'm going to really blow up at some time in the day. And I'm going to end up having to make amends. There's all kinds of crazy things that's going to happen. But if I will do this, and usually for me, when I pause, one of the things I like to do is really take a look at that 10th step also. I don't ever want to exclude that 10th step from any of this work, because when I do that, and I remind myself that I'm no longer running the show, this is not my business, God, it's yours. Humbly saying to myself many times each day, thy will be done. And I always add there, thy will, not mine, be done, because I want to try to enforce my will from time to time. But look at these wonderful promises right here if we will do this, look at what ends up happening for us. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. I was full of that prior to coming in to the rooms of SA. I mean, I had been in AA all these years and never practiced this, and I'm eat up with this stuff. I'm wore out mentally, physically. I'm wore out. I can't even get up off the couch, and I can't figure out what's the matter with me. I'm sure lust has something to do with it, but really, you take all of that away, we're looking at a much deeper problem here, and a lot of this right here is what it is: fear, anger, worry, self-pity, foolish decisions. Lust might be the vehicle, but this is the gasoline that runs the vehicle. You take away the gasoline, the vehicle no longer runs. And, we are no longer sexually acting out, because if there is no lust, there is no acting out. We are not acting out. And so if I'm not doing this and I'm still acting out, I may ask myself, I wonder what I could do differently. Well, here it is. Look what it says. We become more efficient. Now, this is what's happened, and I've noticed this. And, I begin to think, man, I've got a little more energy than I used to have. I don't really understand what's going on. But the more I read this, the more I understand exactly what happened to me. Look at this promise. We do not tire so easily. I'm not so wore out all through the day like I used to be. I'm not manipulating. I'm not conning. I'm not lying. I'm not setting up events to set up events so that I can act out. And I'm not doing any of that anymore. So I'm not tiring out so easily, because I'm not burning up energy foolishly as I did when I was trying to arrange life to suit myself. Now, remember from pages 60 to 62, we looked at the man who wants to arrange life to suit himself. And here it is again. I'm no longer doing that. So I'm not wore out like I was back over there whenever this man began to lead me into the third step work and all that over in that part of the book. So remember, this is the connector back to that guy, 60 through 62. What a beautiful promise. I'm not burning up energy foolishly like I did when I was living like that man lived. It works. It really does. Well, we alcoholics are undisciplined, and it won't take very long when I work with a new man to put him into steps 10 and 11 to find out how disciplined of a man he's going to become pretty fast. And that's why I start in 10 and 11. We need to start that discipline process right away, because we are very undisciplined people. So 10 and 11 is going to give us a good look at whether or not we're going to, how we're going to do with the process moving forward. And I use that with all the new men that I work with. So it says we let God discipline us. For a long time, I had problems in reading that. I didn't like that. I didn't want to hear that at all, actually. Discipline me. I mean, I was disciplined by a man whenever I was young, and I mean, he used to really whip me. He disciplined me. I was scared to death of him. In fact, he was a man that I ended up taking his life. And, it was just, so discipline, I don't like that word discipline, but they told me to look at it in this way: discipleship. Well, I really didn't like that word either, because that's a Christian word. And, whenever I came in here, I didn't like anything about that. But really what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow God to make a disciple of me through these first 11 steps. I'm going to let him discipline me in such a way that I can live my life differently. I can be free of lust and sexual acting out. I transform into a different person, and I'm going to be able to carry a true message of recovery to you. And that's what I'm looking to do. So whenever he says we let God discipline us in the simple way we've just outlined, that's exactly what I want done in the first 6 chapters of this book. But remember what he says here. This is not all. And he said that all the way through this book. I get through with one step. That's not all. We got a little more. Once more. No, we got some more. Action and more action. It's like, my God, when does it ever end? And then you get all the way over to here and you think it's going to end. And he says, nope, that's not all. There's action and more action. And faith without works is dead. So in other words, I can have all the faith in the world and I can still die from this. I can pray all I want to pray and not take any action. I can still die from this. Action, action, action. And it's given me a way to do that over and over. So the next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. And there again, that's a chapter. The entire chapter is devoted to step 12, the way it looks like, and working with others. It's very important for those of us that have begun sponsorship with other people. If you ever wonder, how to sponsor someone as outlined in the program, you're going to hear me say it over and over and over, and a lot of people don't agree, and some people even get mad about it. But unless you've had an experience as outlined in this book in the first 6 chapters, we have transformed. We are free of lust. We're no longer sexually acting out. Then I've got no message to carry to anyone. I don't. At that point, I'm carrying the disease more than I am the message, because I'm going to tell them all kinds of things like, and it sounds really good. I've heard it in meetings. Go to 90 meetings in 90 days. That's great. That is really great. Do that. But what about on day 91 for a guy like me? What am I going to do after that? Just keep going to the meeting every day? Okay, I'll keep doing that. But why am I not getting better? Why does everybody else look like they're getting better? My head's still going crazy, because one thing, I'm not doing any of this work that it talks about through the book. I'm just going to meetings. For me, that's not enough. And we've seen that back on page 17 in this book, that if the fellowship can carry you to that point, and you're okay, God bless you. Keep going. I encourage you to do that. But if you're a guy like me, that's not going to be enough for you. The fellowship will only carry you so far. And then the spiritual experience is going to have to be, that's going to have to be the greater work. And for me, that's been the truth. And for many others that I know. So, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be looking at this chapter, working with others. We'll be looking exactly how to sponsor people after we have had this experience. And it's going to be a great chapter to go through together. I mean, I just absolutely love it. And, at that point, we will finish up the book study. Man, what a great service this has been. I want to thank Dennis so much for all that he does in the fellowship. And I know he hears that every day. Some people come to SA and they no doubt get better if they will do the work that's outlined here. But some people come to SA and SA gets better. And that's who Dennis is. He does a lot of work behind the scenes. This would have never happened had not been for him, because he shows up every week and takes care of this stuff. I just show up and talk and share my experience, strength, and hope. I'm so grateful for him and for his recovery as well. And many of you on the call, Miss Susie, Marty, Jason, Joe from New York, Dean from Canada, all you guys, it's been wonderful. And it's really, really helped my recovery. Every time that I've got to do one of these over the years, it helped me. Even whenever I was sick as I was with lust, I could go to a conference, I could go to another group and do one of these book studies, and it would carry me one more day and one more day and one more day. When I came to SA this time, I felt very inadequate in coming to share the book with you. I just did. I don't know what it was on the inside of me, but the first 5 or 6 sessions that we done of this, Dennis would call me up, David, and I don't know what it was. I just didn't feel adequate to share the message with you. But as time has went on, that's come back to me. And I thank you so much for that, because it's allowed me to look at this work in a whole new way. It's allowed me to share it in a completely different way than I ever had before. I never shared about lust and sexual acting out. I was very ashamed of that. Today, I'm not ashamed of that. I've been asked to do this book study again over a 3-day period with a group in AA. And it's what a wonderful promise. I was asked to leave. The big book stays alive and not to come back. And rightfully so. I got us run out of several states with my acting out and my behavior. And a man called me up about 2 weeks ago and he said, David, how you doing with your zipper problem? I said, it no longer exists. The problem has been removed. And I said, that never was the problem, correct? He said, yeah, I know it. You just didn't know it. And he said, where you at with it? And I told him. And I told him about you guys, not by name, but I told him about you guys. I told him about our fellowship. And I told him about the work that we do here to help each other to stay sober one more day. He invited me to come back to the Big Book Stays Alive. And wow, what a wonderful gift that is, because Joe's wife of Joe and Charlie is still living. And she was very, very hurt when this all came out with me. But today they've invited me to come back and to be a part of that one more time. And I'm just so grateful, because it's a wonderful way to carry the message. I did tell him, I said, one thing that I'm not going to do is I'm not going to not talk about what this fellowship has done for me. So if you're expecting me to do that, then we don't even need to pick up again. And he said, no, in fact, whenever we do some of these workshops and we do these book studies, I would like for you to invite that fellowship to attend. And so what a wonderful, wonderful gift that this is. And you guys have helped me to look at this, again, like I say, in a completely different way. I see now, I've seen before, but I never really could connect the dots as I do now, that this all has to do with what's going on currently in my life for all those years. And for me, that was lust and sexual acting out. Today, it's recovery from lust and sexual acting out. So I'm looking forward to what the future holds, where God leads me with this book and with the guys that I'm sponsoring. There's a lot of them on the call today. They're doing the work. Those guys are sober. They're sober and they're starting to recover. And I've seen a great change in their life. I really have. There's been quite a few I've had to let go, because they just didn't do the work. And I don't know. I don't know about anybody else, but for me, I know how to act out. Yeah, you don't need to talk to me all day about that. I know how to do that. I want to talk about recovery, and I want to talk about how to recover as outlined in the book. And so I'm looking forward to the next couple of weeks together. Thank all of you that has come out all of these weeks over and over and over. It's been a great experience. It really has. And I love you guys. And Dennis, thank you so much again for your service, brother. And I'm going to hush with that. Look forward to hearing everybody else.